Every revolution starts in the minds of the people. Arm yourself for the war of ideas. Take back your life. Take back your liberty. Tom Mullen Talks Freedom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tom Mullen Talks Freedom. Today, I'm speaking with Carla Gericke. After winning the green card lottery, Carla left the plains of Africa for a better life in America. Before then, she finished boarding school when she was just 16 years old and law school when she was 21, working as an attorney in both South Africa and later California. Carla is author of The Ecstatic Pessimist, Stories of Hope, parentheses mostly, now available on Amazon or directly from Carla, personalized with shipping included. And Carla's also appeared on WMUR, CNN, Fox News, and been featured in GQ and Playboy, been quoted in The Economist, and has discussed libertarianism on the BBC. She has visited more than 40 countries, hiked to the base camp of the 10th highest mountain of the world, lost a shoe in a taxi more than once, had her passport stolen in Goa, got kidnapped in Vietnam, and has noshed on more mystery meat street food than she cares to admit. Carla is the President Emeritus of the Free State Project, a conspiracy to get tens of thousands of libertarians to move to New Hampshire, take over the state, and leave everyone alone. And she just started her own webcast called The Carla Gericke Show. Carla's also again running for New Hampshire State Senate against an opponent she describes as an 80-something 12-term establishment dude, and she's getting closer and closer to beating him. Carla, welcome to the show.
Tom, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, you've got a long list of credentials and accomplishments and experiences there, so I'd like to get into just about all of them. But first and foremost, this Free State Project's been around for quite a while now. What's the latest and greatest on that?
Yeah, so we are going from strength to strength. The Free State Project is moving and growing, and the movement, we put the move in movement, and we have a lot of people coming out. Of course, based on the past 2 years, I would say corona fascism and medical tyranny is a growth sector for people who are into liberty, right? Because people are looking for answers, looking for solutions. And, at this stage, those of us who are early movers and sort of the pioneers for this vision of a libertarian state, where we can be together, where we can concentrate, where we can keep a small, limited government. If people want to have their communes and their communism, Vermont's a great state, you can go over there. Let's give us some kind of homeland for people who value individualism, value personal responsibility, value property rights. So we're going from strength to strength. In fact, we have a housing shortage, and that's our biggest problem right now. There are more people who want to move than we can actually find homes for. So the past year, we've definitely seen a lot of legislative wins also in terms of what's happening at the State House. Now, the Free State Project, of course, is just the movement to bring people to the state. Once they get here, they do different things. Some people start businesses. Some people do a lot of civil disobedience. That was kind of where I came from. And then, people run for office, as I've been trying to do for the past while.
Somebody's got to do it.
That's kind of how I got into the Senate race originally, to be honest. I got a phone call at I think it was 3:10 on a Friday afternoon. I was out on a trail with my dog and my phone rang, and it was someone, and they were like, no one put up their name to run against this establishment dude. And they were like, will you run? And I was like, I don't know, not really. That's not really what the vision I saw, but sure, I'll help you guys out in a pinch. It was actually Bike Week, which means, hundreds of thousands of motorcyclists come to the state of New Hampshire. And so I told them, let me call my husband, let me see whatever. And they're like, oh, by the way, you can't file downtown Manchester. You have to file in Concord, which is about 30 minutes away from where I live. So it's like 4:20. And I'm like, I got to get to Concord. And I jump in my car and it's Bike Week. It's insane traffic. I literally left my car double parked I had 3 minutes. I like ran up the State House steps, went into the Secretary of State's office, and I'm like, and he's like, what? And I was like, I have to file for this position. So that was my entry into politics. From there, it has gotten better. In 2016, I was a relative unknown, and I got about, I think it was 38% of the vote, right? So those would just be sort of base card-carrying Republicans. I run Republican. And then in 2018, I actually ran as a fusion candidate, both Republican and Libertarian. And last year, I actually got 45% of the vote. So we are, we're closing that gap. I think 2022 is going to be the year.
Carla, even 38% of the vote is a big, big number for somebody with our platform. And of course, 45 is incredible. So, I mean, it seems like you're knocking on the door. You think you got a shot this time around?
I do think so. I do need to raise a lot of money. One of the things when we're talking about establishment dudes, not only are we talking about, a 40-year career of corruption. My opponent certainly, he introduced the emergency legislation after 9/11 that was used to sort of implement all the corona fascism we've seen. He gets a lot of money from Pfizer. I'm going to have a fun time talking about that. I think the state of New Hampshire is ready for our message. This is a very libertarian state to start with. Our state slogan is live free or die. So, it doesn't play well in a pandemic, but at the heart of it, that is the issue, right? Like, be free or, don't be free. But that's the line, and that's the line for me.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. Of course, it could be a punchline. But when you really think about it, these lockdowns and the measures they took in 2020, the government with its ham-fisted approach probably killed a lot of people. We used to be lectured by NPR that every, I believe it was 1% raise in the unemployment rate nationally, was the equivalent of 30,000 deaths. Everybody forgot about that statistic when the lockdown started. How many people did they kill with these things? Really, a lot of freedom would have been better, and a lot of common sense, maybe protecting elderly people and not just locking down everybody and closing their businesses.
Absolutely. And, here in New Hampshire, we were really on the forefront of standing up against that sort of medical tyranny. I was out there from April 2020. I've been at health freedom marches, health freedom rallies. Those groups of people have really grown. Initially we were maybe like 100 at the State House. The last one I was at last month, we had over 1,500 people. I gave a speech, and a lot of people came to me afterwards because part of my messaging is everyone's mad, but we actually have to start to show some compassion and some forgiveness if America's going to get out of this mess, and so when I was talking, I did talk about this notion that from a propaganda perspective with social media and the messaging that we see, they've basically put people on high alert. They've overactivated their amygdalas, and it's just this fear model, and that's a real physiological thing. So if in the Second World War, they would put off air raid sirens, right, when the bombs were coming. And people would know when the sirens go off, your cortisol and your adrenaline would spike. You'd run away, you'd go get in a bunker, and you'd hope you wouldn't be blown to bits, right? And that was like a very traumatic experience. But we kind of took that sort of experience and expanded it over now almost a 2-year time, right? Especially in 2020. And we primed people with this like fear model where people are just like, right? And we turned everyone into enemies of each other. And what I want to say is, no, we should unite behind the notion of individualism, because everyone's talking about groups, but groups are only made up of people. So you can't hate the person if you want to help a group. It doesn't make any logical sense. And so with the health freedom people, we've been out there. Our legislature was pretty good. Our governor was pretty good. I mean, there were some soft mandates in terms of masks, but most of it was pushed to the local level. And, New Hampshire last year was the only state we actually cut taxes like really cut taxes. We cut the interest and dividends tax. So that is, New Hampshire does not have a personal income tax, but we did have this dividend and interest and dividends tax. And so we're actually scaling that down. And over the next 5 years, that'll be gone as well. So, you know, it's a great state. I want more people to come. We need to build some houses. So we need some builders too.
I wish I could help you with that. You know, I first met you, I believe, back in 2009, and this project was a little newer then. Do you have a sense of how many people have moved to New Hampshire based on the Free State Project?
So it is hard to track. We track about just over 5,000 that we know who have actually come back to us and been like, yes, we moved. Now, we also know that our sort of people value privacy, probably don't want to be on all kinds of lists and all of that. So, I mean, I would say the alliance of liberty people in New Hampshire is tens of thousands strong. We know that because we're seeing with the rise of tyranny itself, or totalitarianism or authoritarianism, whatever you want to call it, but, you know, big bad guys trying to make a lot of little people do stuff, right? With the rise of that, we're seeing different groups coming together. So last year, the flavor was very much health freedom, lots of mommies, but we have this massive school choice thing. Of course, there's the gun rights people. And so what happens when you have massive big government that are pressing on every issue, you're actually activating a mass amount of counter energy, because you've literally made people in every silo that you're trying to control mad. And so here in New Hampshire, we're really seeing that bubble up from, you know, something like gun rights, where, of course, with the help of Free Staters in 2018, we introduced constitutional carry. The naysayers were like, the sky's gonna fall, there will be blood on the streets of New Hampshire. And of course, that doesn't happen, right? So every time they put out the messaging where they're like, crazy bananas, the worst thing is going to happen. So Cassandra, right? The less I think people are going to trust them. And we really are seeing that now. I think with shows like yours and mine, right? Where new voices are coming up, and we're seeing this decentralization as we crush the legacy media.
Yeah. And you know, you make several good points there. You know, I don't know how many elections Free Staters have won, but you don't necessarily have to win the election to move the needle, right? I mean, if you have a block of votes that obviously are looking for, let's say, constitutional carry, and somebody gets elected that doesn't support it, well, the loser in that election is going to say, you know, if I had those votes, I could have won. This is why I try to persuade my fellow anarchists. Yeah, vote. You know, I mean, back when I went to the barber and before I started cutting my own hair, when they closed all the barbers down in 2020, you know, I wish
I had that excuse.
Yeah, I could vote on the way to the barber shop. So I'd say, look, this cost me nothing. There's no line. Well, I live in the middle of nowhere. And you can move the needle because the loser is always looking for why did they lose, right? And the winner is always, you know, looking, why was it so close? We're not looking for establishment politicians to do the right thing. We're looking for them to look out for their own selfish interests and say, you know what? We need to give these people what they want, or they're going to kick us out of office, even if they don't win. So that's just one strategy I've long tried to advocate. How have the Free Staters done? Have you elected some people?
Oh, yeah. So we elected our first Free Stater in 2008, which was the year I moved to the state. It was actually a Democrat, and they served 2 terms. And then the Democrats sort of realized, oh, no, we have an individual thinker, a critical thinker in our midst, you know. So because, you know, we do see that the Democrats tend to vote with a big block. So first one was elected in 2008, and from then we have exponentially grown. There are about, you know, it depends who you ask, but let's say dozens, I would say 30, 40 plus Free Staters who currently serve. We are in leadership. We work together with what is called the Liberty Bloc in the state that is over 100 representatives. They're primarily Republicans, but they were sort of the guys who were forced up into the bleachers when they were meeting in session in the big sports arena, and they had, everyone 6 feet apart in their desks with their masks, and then there were the 100 people who could think for themselves sitting up in the bleachers. So we do actually have swayable power or influence at this stage. We're not the majority in anything, but we are enough people that if we want to jam something up, we probably can. And if we want to push something through, we want to. And that has created a really interesting dynamic. I mean, one of the things I can tell why I know we're in the upswing is we're getting attacked from both sides. There are a lot of hit pieces coming out from the left, from the unions, from the rags, from the co-opted media, and then even a little bit from the rhinos in the party. There was a guy, I think his last name is Marsh. He claimed to be a Republican who, with much fanfare, just left the party to join the Democrats. And I went and looked at his voting record, and I was like, you have a C-, which, by one of the organizations that tracks liberty in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. And I was like, your voting record is like worse than some of the Democrats that we actually like. So you haven't actually left the Republican Party. You have literally just gone to the party you vote with. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And of course, when the naysayers and the critics say things, I always ask them, I'm like, so you don't like us because we like freedom? Like liberty, less government? Like how? I'm always curious, how are we the ones getting attacked? Because if you flip that on its head, you have to ask, and I ask people all the time, I'm like, so if you're not pro-liberty, what are you pro? Are you like pro-slavery? Because in some ways, we're the modern abolition movement. The government thinks they own our bodies. We saw that this last year. And someone has to stand up and say, no, this is enough.
The Free State Project definitely led this, as far as I know, but I think you're seeing another kind of long dead aspect of the American system come back, and that's federalism. And you can kind of pick, like you said, you can pick what you like out of the different kinds of states. You want to be more European socialism, you can go to Vermont. If you want to be Trump, MAGA, you can go to Florida. South Dakota is pretty interesting. The governor there kind of went down the line with DeSantis in Florida, but when it came to prohibiting businesses from issuing vaccine mandates, she said, no, that's not my job. I don't like it, but the government can't really tell them what to do. More of a libertarian approach. And of course, when you guys do take over, and you will take over, then we'll have something like an anarcho-capitalist paradise, or the closest you can get with a government, right?
Yeah, certainly, it is an exciting time because I am certainly looking down the line 10, 15 years. I've been in New Hampshire now for 13 years. I mean, this is my forever home. So I really am strategically thinking, what is that future? How can this look? And back in the olden days, we jokingly, I would call it, let's build the Yankee Hong Kong. That worked until China took over Hong Kong. Now we have to come up with a new analogy. So let's say, the sort of Yankee Switzerland, right? Like sort of a Kennan level governance, right? But, when we look to the future, New Hampshire has nuclear. We have a license that is extended to 2030 to build there is a second generator reactor. So, I would maybe like to see some green energy come into the state. Let's build a second nuclear. And, I don't know, maybe if I'm going to become president of a free New Hampshire, then I might have to give my people some literal energy power, and then we'll let them export it to the rest of the eastern seaboard, right? So I'm half joking, but I'm actually quite serious. I would love to see us look at every little bit of liberty that works somewhere else, because here's the fascinating thing about the world. If you look at different countries, they all kind of have like something, right? Like Germany has Autobahn, so they don't have speed limits. And magically that works there. And, pot's legal in X, Y, and Z countries, and magically that works there, right? So if we have to fight the globalists, We can also learn a little bit from them, but we can do it in reverse. They're trying to figure out how to control all of us. And I'm kind of like, why don't we take every pocket of freedom in the world that we know works because it's working somewhere, and we just all introduce them into New Hampshire. So I would love to see it just truly be a free state, and then we know that will create prosperity, and from there maybe we could have, incredible privacy laws, crypto banking, real banking privacy again, because of course Switzerland totally messed that up, right? So I think the future is bright, and all I want is more people who are creative and innovative and really have a sense of positivity towards the future, to be like, don't stay wherever you are. You're not going to change these libertarian LA people. I'm like, you're not going to change it. So either you like hot weather and pretty people and then stay there, but admit it, or come here and actually build something that we can show people we are the libertarian mecca of the world.
I think because of the COVID disaster in 2020, it became very apparent. Yes, there can be a difference between what state you live in. I want to just ask you, do a thought experiment with me, and let's return to our overtaxed, overregulated lives of 2019. And I'm very interested in you telling the folks, number one, what kinds of things, if you got elected and you got even a majority in the legislature, that you could accomplish to make your state different. And I also want to talk about at the local level. So this is where I don't really know if they were silly enough to elect me like town supervisor. I'm not going to de-Sovietize the water system. What could I do that could make it more like the kind of place I'd want to live? So tell the folks some of the things you might accomplish at the state and local level.
So I think on a state level, we could do things like one of the areas New Hampshire struggled in is cannabis legalization. We were actually the first state to pass it through a legislature under a Republican House and Senate, passed marijuana legalization back in 2008 or 2010, and it was vetoed by a sitting Democrat, John Lynch. And so now we are literally the only state in New England that doesn't have legalized cannabis. So I would probably start there. I would work on occupational licensing. I don't think we fully realize what a mess that actually creates, because a lot of the stuff we've seen over the past year, doctors aren't speaking out about things they should be speaking out about. And it's because, again, we're back in that fear model, right? Oh, I can lose my job. If I lose my job, I can't pay my mortgage. I can't put my kids through school, that whole cycle, right? So with occupational licensing, I'd like to see a lot of that go away. I'm a big government accountability, open government proponent. I think we could do so much better. One of the bills I would like to introduce would be something like, if any town or city responds to a right to know request. So that's basically New Hampshire's RSA, it's 91A, and it's like FOIA, right? But on a state level. So your freedom of information on a state level. We could do something like, if someone responds to a right to know request, that just goes literally into like a state-run database that collects all the answers, right? Because one person asked for something and you discover, I don't know, let's say the mayor of Nashua is getting a tax abatement on his property that no one else is getting. It'd be useful if, instead of that one citizen knowing that and maybe coming on a show like yours or mine and talking about it, we could create an actual repository for that kind of information. I would love to see something like machine learning introduced, where we could go back through the bills and we could maybe classify them, right? Be like, these are so old, we don't even know why we're talking about laws that have to do with rabbits breeding or whatever it is, right? And just do away with those. Maybe have some in the middle where we're like, we should see if these need to sunset. What should we be doing with this? So I think there are a lot of ways to actually clean house and make government more efficient just by going in with some ideas. So those are just, and then obviously energy, I think, is going to be a big factor going forward. So off the top of my head, those are some crazy notions. And I forget what the second part of the question
Well, I
was.
guess, even myself, I don't know what I could do to make a more libertarian Royalton, New York, if they put me in charge of it. What can you do at the town level? I mean, again, what do? They do a little bit with the roads and they do the water system. And do you think we could ever privatize those things?
I do think we can. I mean, it will probably take a while. It might even be a generational thing, but technology is both enslaving us, but also a tool to set us free. I think partly what we're seeing now is a mass decentralization of people's attention. And I just bring that up because with tech, with roads, I mean, over the long term, yes, we have someone sitting in a toll gate right now taking your dollar when you pull up there, right? But we know easy passes have come in and people are willing to adopt those things. So maybe in a year, in 10 years, people, maybe you'll tie it to your vax passport, who knows, right? But you could privatize the roads and have a usage fee based on, how much you're driving, what it is. The real tension, and this is something I genuinely struggle with because my background is, a lawyer in Silicon Valley. I worked with, a lot of tech companies. I worked with Steve Jobs, the whole thing, right? So tech is my baby. And I kind of feel like, we're at this cusp where we're either going to go full CCP totalitarian control tech, where we can't leave the house or buy our groceries or do anything not controlled in some way, but equally that tech can set us free. And so I think we're just in a fight, right? And we're going to see sort of where that falls out. And hopefully it will fall out on a state or federalized or geographic level. And then let's let people be with the people they want to be with. Maybe this is just the next wave of how the world's going to work as more humans become self-actualized and realize, I like this, I don't like this, that, let's let people go do that. I actually want to be surrounded by people who share my values. I believe in private charity, but I don't believe in forced charity.
Sure. That time of the year again when we're all looking for something special to give friends and loved ones for the holidays. Unfortunately, the government and its bank have worked especially hard this year at doing what they do best, make things more expensive for the rest of us. Well, I have great news. You can get a free copy of my new ebook, An AntiState Christmas. That's my gift to you in appreciation for listening. But that's not all. I've also made the book available as a paperback at an incredibly low price, so you can get a few copies to give as gifts. It makes a great stocking stuffer. And don't worry, this is not some preachy libertarian treatise. It's full of fun and even includes a special Christmas beverage recipe. Get more information and your free ebook at AntiStateChristmas.com.
That just ain't true. We help each other when we don't mean to. That's what we call the invisible hand. Something no politician understands. Just leave it up to supply and demand.
You reminded me when you brought up licensing. Believe it or not, I lived in Florida for 10 years. And in the 2000s, I was in the hearing aid business. And just about everybody has a parent or a grandparent or somebody who has trouble hearing. And we all know they're very expensive. And part of that cost is real. You really need a professional to fit a hearing aid to an individual. But part of that cost is also regulatory because they always up the requirements for the credentials of the person that does that fitting. So when I was in the business, you had hearing aid specialists. These are people without an advanced degree, but who passed a licensing test, and they were really good. And in fact, they were better at fitting hearing aids than the audiologists, who are better at many other clinical things, right? So you had that, and that made hearing aids more expensive. They were always trying to get the hearing aid specialists out of the business and trying to up the requirements so you had to go to an audiologist. Well, we came along with a product that was going to be called a assisted listening device or something to that effect. It's been 15 some years, but this was something where you'd buy it over the counter. It was just a real simple amplifier. And, there were all these regulations saying you couldn't sell that without one of these people fitting it, which would then drive the cost into the thousands. We were going to sell it for $200 or $300. So we actually tried to lobby the state legislature to get that out. And on the last day, they just descended on us and just said, no, 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 no. And like the reasoning was, this is dangerous for people to do this without, a clinician, and it's not like there's nothing to that, but it's like, come on, our device was going to put out 30 decibels and they were saying you need somebody to fit that. Well, an iPad puts out like 90 or 100 decibels and nobody fits those, right? So it's just a spurious argument. It's protectionism. It's another kind of, if you do it from people overseas, it's called tariffs. When you do it here, it's called forced unions or guilds. But these are the kinds of things that really impact people's lives. They don't realize, oh, now I got to spend $5,000 to get my dad hearing aids, where, his hearing isn't that bad. Maybe something like this could benefit him for a while and save some money. So that's just one little thing. Of course, they want to license people just to do your nails. It's out of control. There's always some corrupt economic incentive behind this. So you could do a lot at your state level. You could probably do a lot at the local level. And you've taken a real unique approach. We're going to win elections because we're going to bring the voters into the state and get them to move here. It's great.
Well, and also, again, it is the live free or die state. So a lot of our neighbors really are quite libertarian. My neighbor across the street, she's probably in her late 70s, and she's still, climbing on her roof, putting up her Christmas lights. It's a hardy bunch of people who take care of themselves up here, and I applaud that, and I love that, and yay. And so let's bring in more people, but let's also, convince our friends and neighbors, because I think at this stage, the messaging from a libertarian perspective is like live and let live. And mind your own business. And I don't see how those are controversial, right? The problem comes in is because we've given up ourselves to this safetyism notion, which is exactly what those hearing aids are, right? And that pervades everything now. Apparently in this infrastructure bill that they signed, you're going to have to blow in your car in order to start your car. Now, I stopped drinking, but had I not stopped drinking, that probably would have been a problem, right? And so there are all these things in this bill too that we just don't even know about. And so it gets back to, I think, psychologically, where are we as a people, right? And are you going to let your life be defined by fear and being scared and living in this constant state of anxiety? And it's not a healthy space. That is just, it's literally toxic, at least on a cellular level. Or are we going to say, what, life's not actually that scary. This is the best the world has ever been, regardless of what anyone has to say about it. Things are exceptional. They can get better. We just have to really want that. And maybe, again, if you don't want it and you want to be crazy safetyism, just go live somewhere else. But give us a place where we too can exist. I mean, I'm at the stage where this is going to start to sound like, we're building a homeland, but in some ways I kind of feel that way, because it shouldn't be this hard to just tell people you don't have authority over my corpus. Like this whole notion where people are literally, I have a lot of progressive friends, and I came from the left. And I'm like, I don't know how people went from my body, my choice to literally my body, my choice for abortion is what they say, right? And then they literally are now saying, but your body, my choice also.
Right. And, this applies everywhere. The minimum wage argument is always made as if the employer is exploiting the worker. And no one ever looks at the minimum wage laws as a prohibition on selling your own labor at whatever price you choose. Really, if I tell you you're not allowed to work for $6 an hour, I'm telling you I own you, right? It's not up to you how you direct your own actions. It's up to me. Nobody ever looks at it that way. But you could apply that across the board. And the other thing I want to point out You bring up this conflict between safety and liberty. It's not like the government ever does well. It's really a false choice. Do you want more safety? Do you want more liberty? I mean, everybody's appalled about Afghanistan, right? We spent 20 years, I don't know how many trillions of dollars. We killed hundreds of thousands of people, our own and other people. And what do we get out of it? Nothing. And, they're like, oh, that's terrible. But that's not an aberration. Look at the war on drugs. 50 years after it started, we've got an opioid epidemic. I mean, that's the government's own assessment of its work, right? I mean, what have they done well? The Department of Education, has that gone well? So I guess, you really don't have to make a choice between letting the government keep you safe and supposedly protecting your freedom. They're not going to keep you safe. Obviously, they didn't keep us safe from COVID-19. It's a disaster. Would have been much better off if they did nothing. Don't just do something, stand there, right? So yeah, I mean, it really is. We're presented with these false choices. I remember air raid sirens going off and crawling under my desk in grade school because we were all going to get nuked. It just never ends, and it never ends well either.
Yeah, and I think that exactly that philosophy of them telling us we can't do without them, but then we look at their track record and you go, but, you'll listen to someone like Biden and, he's like, oh, we have systemic racism. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And I'm like, dude, you've been in charge for 40 years. If it's wrong, it's your fault. Same with the people here, my opponent in my Senate race. I'm like, he'll be like, this is wrong. This is wrong. And I'm like, you've been there for 20 years. If it's wrong, it's on you. How about you let some fresh blood come in and fix your mess? And I think part of the hysteria we're seeing and this high level of propaganda, because, we've seen some interesting things happen over the last year, and propaganda is sort of my little area of interest. I just like to watch it and sort of see what's going on, right? And part of what they are upset about, I think, is I read this book by Nicholas Sparks. It's an old book, but it's about sort of how the internet has changed the way we think and all of that. And he talks about how with hyperlinking, we actually changed how we process information. Now, someone like me who is, people call me a conspiracy theorist. I regard myself as an investigative reporter. I have questions and I try and find answers to things. Do I think the lizard people are running the world? Categorically, no. But do I think it's funny to think about if we're going to have a false flag alien invasion? Yes, right? So with the hyperlinking, what happened was we have all these intelligence agencies, government departments, and they were able to bury things because if you were curious, I had to go to the library, I had to Dewey Decimal System, I had to pull this naval report, I had to find the footnote, then I had to go find that source. And the internet changed all of that, right? It literally made it so that we could rabbit hole, right? You could start here and you could end there. And that meant we were actually, for the first time, conclusively able to build the arguments that said, this is nonsense, this is nonsense, this is nonsense, and we could build it. And they were like, in 2013 or whatever, we went off the they changed the law to say that the U.S. intelligence agencies may now use propaganda against U.S. citizens. And my argument is when that happened is actually when we saw this weird thing that started to happen with the division of people and how social media is being used to manipulate everyone. So again, if I'm doing the big tech pitch for good, it's like they are now using the technology to manipulate us. But for a moment there, we were winning. And I think we can win again. It's just going to be what is going to happen in 2022, I think.
I actually did a lot of ghostwriting over the last 6 or 7 years. And I ghost wrote a book for somebody who was actually on the other side of this COVID thing, saying people aren't taking this seriously enough. And one of the things I was trying to research was asymptomatic spread. And every time I found something on asymptomatic spread, I would read the study and they couldn't prove it, right? They were like, well, we haven't found a case yet. And then the last one I read, it said that they looked at what they call secondary attack rates, which is if you're in the same house, how many people in your own household do you infect? And the secondary attack rate for people with symptoms was like 16%. And the people that were asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic was like 0.7%, less than 1%, within the margin of error. So it might not be happening at all. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but all I know is I can't find any proof that this even exists. But, so that's just one thing. But every headline, asymptomatic, right? And most people believe that.
But think from a propaganda perspective what that was, right? So asymptomatic actually means healthy, right? You don't have any symptoms and you're going about your life. Now, I mean, prior to 2020, that I think that's what's so frustrating about what happened is they literally took everything and turned it on its head. Never in the history of mankind have we quarantined the healthy. Never before have we said, oh, you might be healthy, asymptomatic, but we're going to lock you down. I mean, the insanity of the response, and it's very important for listeners to remember that every time you see the sentence, because of the pandemic or this economic thing, because of the pandemic, it's not because of whatever happened medically. It is the government's response to the pandemic that has caused all of these things. And we know, because back to federalism, you could take a state that, California versus Florida, and we can just take the data now and we can compare it. And we know worldwide, the response, regardless of what they did, made not one iota of difference anywhere because the masks don't really work. Asymptomatic carrying is not really a thing. And locking down, not locking down, doing these control factors, none of it mattered, right? So we may as well have just gone ahead like we did in 2003 when the first SARS came around, or, there have been bad flu seasons. It's a reality of humanity, but it's not a reason to change the entire way we're going to govern the world. And I'm a huge traveler. You said it in the opening. And I'm really concerned that I was like, wow, I may very soon not be eligible to travel to a lot of places. So maybe when we, have our free state, I would like to think we're going to have a crypto airline and that, we will let people freely travel where they want to travel with maybe like little contracts with regional airports and that kind of stuff. So the more they clamp down, the more they create creativity on this side for the rest of us. So
I'm sorry I've kept you so long, but can you say just a few words about the Carla Gericke Show? Where is it available? What's it about?
Sure. So the Carla Gericke Show I recorded my 6th episode yesterday. So I'm trying to feature Free Staters in the Free State and really talk about liberty in a positive way. I made a lot of lifestyle changes over the past 5 years. I quit drinking, I changed to keto, ancestral living, I do low carb, high good fats, lots of yoga, walking, I lost a lot of weight. And I really just want to spread that sort of message because I think in the end, in order for us to fight the man, we have to be units that are able to do that. If health is going to become a basis for people to discriminate against us, I think that we want to be as healthy as we can to go into that fight. And once you're healthy, you actually get mind health back, and it helps with things like the fear and the anxiety and those things. So the show is pretty much highlighting Free Staters, telling everyone's how I came to New Hampshire story, because in some ways I do think we are refugees at this stage. I feel like I'm an immigrant to the state of New Hampshire, and I've come here for that American dream, or the Granite Stater dream, I guess. And so I have guests on and I talk about happy, bubbly stuff. And sometimes I complain a lot too. So, and people can find that on YouTube tends to take some of my stuff down. They don't like what I have to say most of the time, but I'm also available on Odyssey. And so people can find me primarily, just search for my name. I'm very active on Twitter, Facebook, social, Insta, and my website, carlagericke.com, is like a good central place to find all of this stuff.
And that's CarlaGericke.com, correct?
Yes, thank you.
All right. What's the link for the Free State Project?
So that is fsp.org. And if people want to come visit, we are setting up visiting things all the time. We, of course, have the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which I hope you'll come to. That'll be next year in June. We have Liberty Forum coming up in March. That'll be the first weekend in March in Manchester, New Hampshire. That one's a little more suit and tie, a little more policy focused and politics, but it's also a great fun time. The end of December 18th and 19th, they're doing a big thing out on the Sea Coast. So they'll have some comedians coming in, Robbie the Fire something, I'm gonna
Bernstein.
Yeah, Robbie Bernstein is coming in. He'll be doing 2 sets, and then they're doing a bus tour of the area. I mean, one of the biggest selling points of New Hampshire is it has the highest quality of living rating. It was just rated #1 again for freedom on the Freedom Metrics. It beat Florida. And it's incredibly beautiful. We just got out of fall. It's like living in Candyland, and our trees make sugar. So a little plug for maple syrup too.
All right. And last but not least, what's the website for your campaign?
So that is carla4nhsenate.com. And there is a donate button there. And actually, I've probably slapped that on the front of my website as well. Yeah, I'm going to need donations. I want to do some TV commercial. I mean, the juxtaposition is there. We are winning. There is a lot of money coming into the state. Obviously, we have gotten a lot done with a little. So I'm like, yo, billionaires, you guys want to buy a state? Holler at me.
Well, Carla, I want to thank you for being here and say I fully support you taking over the state of New Hampshire, the country, and then the world. But let's at least get you elected to the Senate first. Folks, go and check out Carla's show, check out her campaign, contribute to it if you can, and check out the Free State Project. You want to consider going somewhere where people believe what you believe. It's not crazy. It's happening. It's happening all over the country. Carla, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, friends, that's going to do it for today. Don't forget to get a free copy of my new ebook, An AntiState Christmas, at AntiStateChristmas.com. Of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you normally listen. And please do go to the Tom Mullen Talks Freedom website at tommullentalksfreedom.com and leave a review. And if you like the music you've heard on Tom Mullen Talks Freedom, you can hear more at tommullensings.com. Thanks for listening.
The war of ideas has only just begun. Arm yourself with the knowledge you need by heading to tommullentalksfreedom.com and subscribing to our email list. And remember, every revolution starts in the minds of the people.